Hello, 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 and welcome to Boss Radio Live, everyone. Welcome to Boss Radio Live. We have a great show coming up today. I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Terre Short, and we will get into a little bit more about her in just a moment, but I'm excited. So, you guys, the show will be coming right up. Make sure you share the episode, share the show. And we'll be right back with a wonderful guest. It's Boss Radio Live with NJ, your three-dimensional podcast. Baltimore, Maryland. I love my city. Wow. Balancing life, health, relationships, and business is hard.
Father's Day extravaganza event being held by LCC Lois Butler Coleman.
Come meet me today at the Spirit Fest between 12 and 4. See you there. I want to hear what you have to say. Again, welcome to Boss Radio Live. Like I said earlier, my guest today is Terre Short. She is an author, a speaker, and she is the creator of Thriving Leader Collaborative. And we're going to find out what that is. But just in case you guys have never heard of Terre, here's a little bit about her. Terre Short is an author, speaker, coach, and creator of the Thriving Leader Collaborative. She believes that truly authentic leadership is achieved when we embrace our inner wisdom in order to overcome business challenges. After spending 30 years as a senior level corporate executive, Terre has spent the last decade advising high-performing Fortune 500 leaders on how to explore intuitive pathways to success. Terre is a master at showing others how to choose the right words to influence and inspire. She coaches leaders on strategies to improve engagement and retention and is the author of The Words We Choose, your guide to how and why words matter. And she excels at humorously leading others to owning their inner narrative, bringing out the brilliance of themselves and others. Again, welcome Terre Short to the show, everybody. Welcome, Terre.
Thank you for having me. You can do my intro all the time, please.
Well, except for that screeching beginning, I don't know what that was, but yes, I wanted to give you a great introduction because I think what you do is great. Number one, I love people who lead leaders because I think leaders definitely need to know how to lead and how to speak to people, which is very important. So I want to talk about that. And so let's hop right into it. I'm excited to talk about that. So you, man, believe that people need to do what you call listen expertly and speak with intention. So I want you to tell us what you mean by that.
Absolutely. Well, I can't go deep into that before I draw attention to the fact that you made me homesick with your showing of the Baltimore Harbor. I haven't lived there for many years, but that's where I was born and raised too. So I'm just
Yes.
sitting here I'm watching the videos and I thought, no, stay longer on the harbor. So
Yes,
thank you
we
for
were
that.
talking about that. Yes, you're a Baltimore girl. So I think
That's
that's
right.
amazing. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. I was having an aerial view of my, looking at all my favorite spots too. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I coach every day, like every day of the week when I'm coaching people to be better leaders, and that always hinges on great communication skills. So if the leader doesn't communicate well themselves and meaning listen well and ask the right questions and such, they're dead in the water. It doesn't matter what degree you have. It doesn't matter what experience you have. If you don't communicate well, I think, yeah, right there. And that because then you don't have an engaged team, you don't have clarity about expectations, about the goals, everybody pulling on the same rope, just everything falls apart when there isn't excellent communication.
Terry, I have to agree with you because the way you communicate with people, first of all, it can either get the ideas across that you're trying to get across, or it can totally sink you. Like,
Sure.
when you're working in teams, very, very important. When you're a manager and you're just trying to move forward a project, super important. Like all of this is really important. Communication is what is driving that whole thing. So, yes. And even home, and I know we're talking about leaders, and people think, oh, workplace and all of that, but even when you're talking about how you lead your family, lead your children, I mean, I think it's appropriate for any venue.
I agree. Well, actually, NJ, when I wrote the book, I went even back a little further than that. And I started the first chapter about the words we choose for ourselves, because
Mm.
whether you're leading your household or you're leading someone at work, you're first and foremost leading yourself. And so thinking about the words you choose that elevate and inspire you, as opposed to the ones you choose for yourself. Sometimes we choose these very minimizing, limiting words for ourselves, intentionally, unintentionally, and we listen to words that have been offered to us from the past, whether that was a parent or a teacher or whomever. These words are in there. You know what I call it? I call it your personal podcast. So this is your podcast, but we all put our headphones on 24/7. Like, don't you sometimes hear that podcast at 3 a.m.?
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So our
Yes.
personal podcast and ends up, I'm the narrator, the producer, the director. I get to decide who comes on the show and when they come on for my personal podcast. But so often we don't take control of that as well as we should. And we allow these negative narratives to perpetuate.
That's a excellent point, and I love how you brought that out. So let's talk about that, because you talk about these words that like limit you or minimize you, and then things, and you also talk about I saw words that kind of elevate, like you said, and inspire you. So can we just have a few examples? Can we talk about some examples there?
Absolutely. So I made this funny list once because people were having trouble remembering them. So I made this sentence, right? I will, when I want, and I get that I can. So if your listeners write that down, I'll read it again. I will, when I want, and I get that I can. So if you take out all the I's and you take out the word that, you're left with will, when, want, and get, and can. And so those are the good words. Those are the positive, inspiring, elevating type words. And I'll talk about what they replace. So will replaces might or probably, wishy-washy, uncertain words like that. We'll probably meet our Q4 goals.
Mm.
What's that mean? Right? And particularly when a leader says that, those that are following the leaders are going, wait, that's not very clear or very certain, right? So we will, or I'm 75% certain that we will. Some other way to to promote that certainty. When replaces if. So when we speak in terms of if, if we're able to do that, or if the information comes in on time, that's not very certain either. Speaking in terms of when the information comes in on time, when we're able to take that next step, it's much more hopeful to speak in terms of when instead of if. Want replaces should. So I have to tell you a funny story, NJ. Sometimes people ask me, well, why don't you live in Baltimore anymore? Why do you live most of the year in California? And I came to California when I was 20. And I teasingly have said for many years, I came to California because of the shoulds. Because I lived in an environment in Baltimore, north of Baltimore, where there were an enormous amount of shoulds. And some of them still exist, like shouldn't wear white after Labor Day, or I don't even remember how it all goes now. You know what I'm talking about. All those, those crazy should things. And, I get it that my parents grew up in that environment and then it perpetuates itself and such. Anyway, I am not a fan of the shoulds. I feel that should feels implied by someone else. Even when I have an internal dialogue in my head going on, you know what, Terry, you should really do such and such. I think to myself, whoa, where'd that come from? I should because of what? I should because society says so, because my friend group says so. What is that about? I want to own it. I want to own what I intend to do. So I replace the should with what? Want. I want to do that. And if I don't want to do that, I'm not going to do it. I'm certainly not going to do it because somebody said I should, right? Here's a big one, but. That the word that replaces but is and. So really important to minimize the number of times that you say but to someone, because it severs. So if you and I are talking and you're giving your thought about something and I say, but NJ, I believe, I've now cut off exactly what you've said. I've gone, but, and I'm jumping in there, right, with my opinion. Whereas if you say what you say and I say, and I see how that could, or that relates to what I wanted to share. And I'm connecting your thought and my thought together in that sense, right? And then get replaces get to as opposed to have to. So think about a world in which we didn't talk about what we have to do anymore. We talked about what we get to do, which breeds gratitude that I get to pick the kids up from school, that I get to go to work today. I get to serve these patients or these customers because that's what I'm here to do. And that's my purpose. Then I'm grateful, right? So that's my big one is the get to. Yeah. Go ahead.
Get to. No, I was going to say, I love the last one, especially with being grateful and practicing that. I had a friend at some place where I used to work, and she just walked up to me one day and she had like a little jar, and she was like, here, so I wanted to give you this, and she had like little stickies and papers, and I was like what is this? And she's like, it's a gratefulness jar. And I was like, oh, okay. So what am I supposed to do? And she was telling me write out these things. And we were talking about like things that she, writes and how she, uses her gratefulness jar. And she actually was mentioning, like some of the things like that, like, oh, I get to, wake up and just live my dream. And my dream, well, she had some things she was doing outside of work, not necessarily work, but like she was talking about, she got to live her dream and do the things she wanted to do. Like she was writing a book and she was doing this and doing that. And she was like, just the things that you get to do and every day of your life and just enjoying life. And I really took that to heart. It actually made me make a lot of changes in my life, because I was like, I want to be, excited and happy. And that actually goes back to the part that you were talking about the things you want to do. That's and right. Not what you should be doing. And I think that's very important, especially I had another guest on, and we were talking about for young people because they suffer under that a lot, because of almost like their parents are forcing their ideas or things that they want on them, or a certain path, and they should be more so looking for what they want to
Right.
do and what kind of excites them, so that they can be
Right.
excited about what they get to do. So all of this is bringing all that back to me, and so I think this is really great. So I love all of that. Changing our vocabulary. Definitely.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
May I piggyback a little bit on your friend's gratitude jar? Because this is good for the young people too. So there's an app for that, MJ. So 5 years ago, 5 years ago, I started using an app called Day One. And I started by just putting one thing I'm grateful for in there, like just a line, like every day. It's like a calendar. And I just, and the reason that younger people like this too, it can feel like a game, like, have I missed a day, or did I miss 3 days? I'm going to catch up. And so now think of the beauty of this. Like, I've done the jar thing before too with our kids, where we'd put something in at the end of the year. We look at all the things. It's a beautiful thing. However, now I can look back, like today, I can pull up the app and can look at today, and I can see what I was grateful for this day last year, this day 2 years ago, this day 3 years ago, all the way back 5 years, right? And so think about that. Think about how that makes one feel to be filled with that recognition and that acknowledgement of all of that gratitude. And so just a beautiful thing. So I love what your friend did.
Yeah.
I'm saying there's even a way to take that to a higher level, right? Which is good fun. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So I love all of this that we're talking about so far. So I want to talk, because you started talking about, being or looking individually at yourself, because we were talking about leaders. So looking individually at yourself. And it's a couple of things, when I was kind of reading up, that you were talking about some other things that really afflict people. I call these afflictions. And one is procrastination. And the other one, I can't even think of it right now, but let's start with procrastination, because that's a big one. Let's talk about that and how we can kind of alleviate that or minimize that. Something.
Well, first of all, I bet you the second one was multitasking, because I put those two together. It is. Okay. So I put these two together because they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. Okay. I'm going to do absolutely everything in the moment, 24/7, this and that, multitasking, or I'm going to avoid everything or anything at cost, right? They're at opposite ends. However, they're both, they're related, let's say. So the neuroscience, I for a year now, I've been very interested in learning more at all the times, about neuroscience and how our brains work, because that's fascinating. I mean, that is the future, for us to be able to pay more attention to what we can change, even that narrative, and how we can change it. And so I might be a little obsessed about the neuroscience.
That's okay.
So the neuroscience behind procrastination is that it's not a failure on anyone's part. It's not laziness. It's actually an emotional response. So without getting into all what goes on in your brain, the basics are that there's something that's activating us. There's something that's, agitating us in some way. And we get agitated. Maybe it's because somebody told us we had to do it. Maybe it's because we didn't think we were supposed to have to do this project in the first place. Maybe we think there's an enormity to the project that we didn't consider before. Something activates us, and we get our knickers in a twist. We get something, gets us to the point of winding up our emotions, whether it's, anger or some sort of dissatisfaction or disgruntledness about it, like those scenarios that I said. And that's what prevents us. It's the emotional response. And here's why. Here's the fascinating part about a couple of the articles that I read, is that it's totally irrational. it's totally irrational to procrastinate because we know there will be a negative outcome, right? We always know that when we choose to procrastinate. There's no good side to the procrastination, right?
No.
So we go, oh, this will affect me negatively. I'm going to do it. It's completely irrational, right? But the reason our mind gets away with it is because what supersedes that the rationality that we would normally possess is the emotion. And so we let the emotion of it get the best of us. So what to do about it is to identify what's kind of activated you in the first place. What is that? What is that sort of sets you off? And deal with that, because it's that's the issue. And maybe you consciously, rationally say, I'm going to deal with that and therefore get to this tomorrow. But you're making a conscious decision now. You're not just irrationally procrastinating the issue, the doing of the thing. And so there's I've actually written an article about this that goes in deeper. It's on my website. There's some key things to do that set you up for success. So you deal with the emotion. So and I'm gonna digress just a little bit, NJ, here is that I believe everyone, and particularly all leaders, my passion right now is to help leaders know how to center themselves at will, right? So that when I talk about dealing with the emotion of it all, if one has a mindfulness practice of any sort, any kind of mindfulness practice that they do, breath work, any kind of meditation, anything that gets them to be able to center themselves, then they're able to center themselves at will, meaning like in the moment, doing something very quick. In 1 minute, I can do some breath work and some exercises that pull me back. And then that's what enables me to be able to rationally assess what the emotion is and why this emotion is holding me up, right? And then there are some things, and I thank you for putting the website up. In the article, it talks through how you leverage community, how you might leverage movement, how you might take what this thing is that you're not wanting to do and break it down into smaller pieces. And there's some exact steps to take in order to get over your inclination to procrastinate. But the number one thing is to deal with the emotion that activated you in the first place.
I love that. And I really love that you went to talking about centering yourself, because I was literally thinking like that is what came into my mind. And what kind of triggered me is when you were saying, taking that moment to deal with the emotion. And I really, I don't know, it's a few years ago that I really got into mindfulness and just taking a moment to become self-aware, like when you're feeling something, just not glossing over it and kind of, like you said, centering yourself. I was like, oh, yes, I'm so glad you said that. I think that is such a great point for people to grasp on, too. Just taking that moment can really bring you back to yourself and can make you very mindful of where you stand in your emotions and just what you're feeling. So I think that's great.
And that's key. It's about what you're feeling. And you can't, when we're spinning at the speed of light, we're not feeling things, right? So it's about being mindful, even for a minute, to be mindful to the point that you acknowledge what you're feeling. So because your body's such a great teacher. So may I share a couple of my favorite quick mindfulness?
Yeah.
Right. Here's one of my new favorites is rubbing your index finger and your thumb together so intentionally that you can feel the ridges. Do you feel the ridges? Every now and again, somebody says, I don't have any ridges. And I think they're a mess in the kitchen.
Yes, I do. I have ridges.
All right. So for a minute, all you're doing is breathing and feeling the ridges. And if I was in a board meeting, I could put my hands under the table and I could still make that my thing that helps me come back to center, right? So that's one. Some people do the box breathing, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, in for 4. And you do that as many times as you can in a minute. Some people do it like this, breathe, let me put my hand, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. And so there's something about the touching that is real. It feels good, right? Again, it makes you not hear what is all going on in the other room or everything else. You're feeling and breathing and such, right? And then the last one that's a huge favorite, it's called a mudra. It's called the Hakini mudra. And this mudra, just putting your fingers together like this, is known for memory boosting and focus. And so here's the funny thing, NJ. I've done this for years without knowing it was a thing.
No. Yeah. There are literal pictures of executives with their hands like this.
A team member would come, or a couple different department leaders would come, and they'd say, all right, Terry, we got this big issue. We've got this problem. And I'd find myself going, okay, well, tell me more. And I didn't know it, but I was causing myself to focus and think harder and be present. And it just was my go-to thing. And now I really appreciate, now that I understand that there's something more to it. So those are all easy things to do.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay. So that's dealing with that. So this multitasking, I was in a class, and this was a few years ago as well. And so, I was always a big proponent of multitasking, because I was like, oh, you get so much more done. And the professor who was teaching, she did like an exercise where she had us doing these multiple things. And it was on this, I can't even describe it to you at this point, but it was like on a sheet of paper. And afterwards, we took a look at it. We could see where we messed up.
Yeah, for sure.
She was explaining that multitasking does not work. It does not work. And we actually are more effective if we take the time and really concentrate on one thing at a time and give it our attention and focus. And so I was like, okay. So it was a very interesting exercise. But what is your big take?
Well, okay, your teacher was ahead of her time. And yes, because people are just starting to understand this. Here's the neuroscience indicates that only 3% of the human population can effectively multitask. So seriously, NJ, when I first heard that, I was like, oh, cool. I'm part of that 3%. Seriously. I was like, oh, well, there I am in that 3%. And then I went, whoa, hang on. And I read the rest of it and said, all right, I see. Because I thought, well, that must be, people always say you get so much accomplished, you get so much done. How do you juggle it all? Of course, I thought I was multitasking, but I wasn't. Now that I understand it, I was single tasking masterfully, right? I was going, focus on this, focus on that. So here's what I call that now. I call it doing things fast. So I wrote a chapter in another book besides the one that you mentioned, and that's what that chapter is all about. So here's what fast is: focused, aligned, and single task. So you create the right focus. Now you've said, I'm not going to procrastinate because there's no value in that, and I don't need the emotion. I'm abandoning what was weighing me down about it. Now I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to choose exactly when I'm going to do this thing. So I'm a big fan of calendaring. So we can talk about that in a moment. Some tips on calendaring. So anyway, I've put it on my calendar. I get to the time of day that I'm going to do this thing. And now I'm going to focus just on this thing. And I'm going to align my, I'm going to ask myself some questions about how this aligns with my values, how this aligns with goals in the organization. I want to understand before I do this thing, how doing it is aligned with what. So where's the value in me doing it? Because that's going to feed the energy it takes for me to do it. So I've got my focus now. I know this is what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to seek that alignment by asking myself some questions. And once I know that, and then all that happens in a nanosecond. Like if I'm prepared enough to do this thing, that alignment really is a thought process that goes on rather quickly. And then I'm going to single task. I'm going to know that I'm capable. I have the right alignment. I have the right purpose for doing this. And now I'm going to do it. I'm going to single task in this amount of time that I've set aside. So then I do it fast. Focus, align, single task.
Okay. Okay. And then just doing one thing at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing
But
at
I
a time.
mean, but
Well, this is a
one thing
great stuff.
in a very focused manner, like this, like, like this very focused manner. And yeah, so that's the way to go.
I can attest to this. And one thing that that I have learned is that when you are in that mode, you really do have to learn to, and you may not always be able to do this, it depends on where you are, but that you do need to learn how to minimize your distractions.
Yes.
Because, they'll be, depending on if you're, working a job or if you're working your own business or if you're doing something else, you may have to, stop and handle something. But as much as you can minimize that, that will help you be able to focus and get things done a little better. But yeah, it doesn't help when you get knocked off tasks a lot.
Right. Right. Well, let's tie that actually. You said earlier, and we didn't quite get there yet, about active listening at the very beginning when good communication. This ties nicely. I believe that active listening, it plays a role when we're having that focus too, when I'm going to focus on this thing. So the key components. So key components of active listening. Now, you might say, paying attention to body language, right? And gestures and such. Well, now I'm by myself and I'm doing this thing. I'm still going to pay attention to my body language, right? So I'm going to tell you now about active listening to you, and then active listening to myself when I'm focusing on this thing, right? So I'm going to have myself in the right physical position and ready to do it, right? I'm not going to interrupt. Another good active listening is that I'm, when I have a thought process, I'm not going to allow my inner narrative to say, oh, you don't really know anything about this, or you're not capable of this task, right? So I'm not going to interrupt myself, just like I wouldn't interrupt you. I'm going to avoid distractions. If I was coming to meet with you, I'd put my phone away. I wouldn't have any beeps happening on the computer. Same thing when I'm meeting with myself to be focused, that's what I'm going to do. So all those sort of same tactics, let's say, for active listening apply to how well I show up to work on a task, to do this project that I'm responsible for.
He probably just blew some people's minds. I'm sure people didn't even think to do these things. I know, because I'm sitting right here with my right next to me. I'm serious. Like this is good stuff. This is you now. I wanted to like speak on a couple more things, but honestly, this has been great. Great, and we've already gone a half an hour. I made to have you back. We
Good.
like we need to like have a class or something and do some exercise.
Yeah,
We help some people. Like this is great. Wow. So this is I'm just gonna stop there because I don't know. But thank you for being on the show today. It was so hard for us to finally get here today.
I know.
But I'm so glad that you came on. You have dropped so much information on us today. Really great information. And I have just left your website up. And for my listeners, it's also in the chat as well. And you can grab that link and get more information on the website. You were talking about a couple of articles. Can they get the book from your website as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys can pick up her book, Why Words Matter. Was that the right title? Did I just butcher your book title?
No, that's okay. The Words We Choose, Your Guide to Why. Right? Yeah, there you go. And we also, I know you said let's do a class or something. We have a free master class coming up. That's coming up July 26th. I mean, not July, January 26th. Look at me getting ahead of myself. So we do have some space left. So it's a free master class, and it's about how to revive and thrive for this next year. So people, they'll find that on the website too.
And that's on the website too. So you guys see the website there. And I'm going to put everything, like I said, in the chat again, just so you all have it. And definitely make sure you guys check that out because that's great. So this is a master class that is going into specifically like your talking about how to
some of these same thing, how to prioritize your well-being. It goes into the calendaring that I mentioned. I'm so passionate about that. If we don't calendar our well-being, when's it ever going to happen? Like when, right? So it's about prioritizing your well-being and really creating more joy. You can't create more joy if everything's stuffed into your day, right? So loosening things up in a way, by way of prioritizing and delegating, how to loosen your day up in order to make space for the things that are most important to you. That's how you thrive. So that's what it's about. And then there's a little bit in there about those limiting beliefs and those words that we choose that need to be abandoned and replaced with a more supportive narrative.
So I definitely need to learn a little bit more about calendaring. I'm trying to get better at it.
Yeah, let's do another show. I'll come back. I want to talk about resilience and calendaring and how we kind of learn from our challenges. And one of those challenges is what we put on the calendar, right?
Yes, we're going to do that, Terry. We're going to do that because that's a good one because I need to organize my life a little better. It'll help me out. Okay, great. Thank you. And the guys, the name of the book, The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How and Why Words Matter. I was like, where did I get that from? But it is part of the subtitle. But yes, definitely look that up. But thank you so much, Terry, for being on the show. It's been great.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you. It's been great fun too.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry for my technical difficulties. I've been dragging you guys. We've been out since the storm here in Baltimore. We've been in and out with the internet. All right. This has been another great show. I thank again my guest, Terre Short, for joining us today. Thanks, Terry.
Great. Thank you.
All right, you guys. Another great episode, another great guest. Make sure you guys check out her website, thriveleadercollaborative.com. Right there. I've left that in the chat for you guys as well. Thank you guys for joining the show. This has been a really great one. And until next time, you guys catch us every second and fourth Friday at 6 p.m. And until next time, I will see you guys. Stay boss.